Hey guys, just coming to you to kind of give you the first of a few lectures over your civil rights movement stuff. Sorry, it's been a week before I could get this on. It kind of got really hectic last week. I had to go to the hospital, had the baby and everything. So just wanted to touch base on you. Hope everybody's doing great. We're gonna get started. I'm gonna go through this pretty quick, just so you can have a few notes. As I say, just read through the PowerPoint, answer those 10 questions. And we'll be moving forward from here, get into the Cold War and things like that. So, first of all, the civil rights movement. Civil rights defined, it means that people have the right to be treated the same regardless of their race, gender, religion. The civil rights laws in the United States and many other nations. Civil rights are guaranteed by law to every U.S. citizen now. It was not always that way, though. It took several years, especially for the African Americans, to get them. Now, following the Civil War, there was a 14th Amendment that guaranteed all citizens with equal protection under the law, and the 15th Amendment said the right to vote shall not be denied basis of race. The southern states, though, created ways to do that, and we've talked about that before with the Jim Crow laws, and Plessy versus Ferguson said that separate but equal facilities were allowed. And then the Jim Crow laws required blacks to have separate facilities in the South. And you can go through the pictures there and see the white restrooms for white men and women and restrooms for colored men and women. And they had also different drinking fountains and so forth. Now, one of the ways the African Americans really started to try to fight back was by using the law and education. They formed the NAACP, or National Advancement for Colored People, and it was founded in 1909 by Webb Dupuis. They used the law to fight for equality. Thurgood Marshall will be a very well-known lawyer. He will actually be the first ever African American Supreme Court justice. He was hired by the NAACP to argue in the Supreme Court against segregation, and he wins. The first court case, the African Americans thought that the way to get equal rights will be through the schools and through education. So the first big court case that was won against segregation will be Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. It actually takes place out of Topeka, Kansas, where a little African American girl had to walk past a white school to go to her black school, and she had to walk across a dangerous set of railroad tracks. So they filed suit, and they actually will win, and it declared segregation of public schools all across the land illegal. Many African Americans and whites will risk their lives and lost their lives in the remedy to this situation. Rosa Parks will be one of the most famous to actually kick off another type of boycott, and that will be the Montgomery Bus Boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. She was arrested for violating segregation laws of Montgomery, Alabama. Of course, you all should know this. She refused to get out of her seat at the front of the bus and move to the back of the bus. A lot of times people say it was just a random thing that she just sat there and she didn't get up and move to the back, but it was a planned out thing. They kind of had discussed that they were going to do this for quite a while, and so one time she was tired and she decided that she was just going to kick it off, and she did it. It sets out the Montgomery Bus Boycotts of 1955. For years, they will boycott the buses. They carpooled and walked through all different types of weather conditions because the buses were really ways for them to get around, but they boycotted them. And eventually they will win with the help of Martin Luther King. He will be pretty much the premier leader for civil rights for the African Americans. He was a very well-known preacher in Montgomery, Alabama, and then he works for civil rights for the African Americans all across the South. While the NAACP fought in the courts, Martin Luther King organized and led the bus boycott and several other boycotts. He was excuse me. He was arrested 30 times over his 38-year lifespan, especially during the Montgomery bus boycotts and so forth. His house was bombed or nearly bombed several times, and he constantly had death threats. Eventually, he will be assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. We'll get to that later. Now, another type of boycott will be the sit-ins, and that is where young African Americans went into um, restaurants and they were not allowed to eat at the lunch counters and up front with the rest of the people. The blacks had special seating in the back and different areas. And so these young African Americans, they went in and they sat where they weren't supposed to. They were refused, and often there were had drinks poured on them, food thrown at them, these things. But they peacefully used this way of demonstrating against the segregation codes. They weren't led by Martin Luther King, but by college students throughout the South. You can scroll through the pictures there and see them. The sit-in tactics, they dressed in their best clothes. They were respectful to the employees and the police, and they did not resist arrest. They did not fight back, and they were remembered everywhere for this peaceful type of protest. Now, there weren't only sit-ins, there were swim-ins at beaches and pools, kneel-ins at churches, drive-ins at motels where they weren't allowed to stay, and study-ins at universities were the spots that they weren't supposed to study at. And so they did all of this stuff peacefully. They knew the repercussions that were coming from this, but they really tried to be peaceful and took their punishment and made a change in the civil rights movement. And I believe we're going to stop there on this first one. I'm going to have another lecture that I will put on. So I hope everybody's doing great out there. And I hope this is helping you out. Again, just kind of work at your own pace on this stuff and get your 10 questions answered. And I hope everybody's having a great week. Talk to y'all later. Bye.